Well, the article was done by Rick Daysog, and he gave me a call on Monday. He asked if I could call him. He left a message on my phone, and he also emailed me, and he wanted to ask some questions regarding my contracts with the Office of Hawaiian Affairs. So the first one I had was in 2009, and the second one was in, I believe, 2014. The first one I explained to him was based upon my a contract that I entered into in 2009 with the University of Hawaii Press. Now, University of Hawaii Press is a peer review publisher. Okay, it's an extension of the University of Hawaii. I was approached by them, by the acquisition editor, okay, to write a book, a manuscript on land titles, because I gave a presentation at the University of Hawaii at the Hamilton Library. And one of the members of the board of editors, I believe, was in attendance. And that person recommended that maybe I should be approached to write a manuscript on this. So I finished my PhD in 2008. Okay, my PhD focused on Hawaii's occupation. In 2009, I entered into this contract. And the title of the manuscript was Hawaiian Land Titles from Origin to the Present. Okay. Now, I then approached the Office of Hawaiian Affairs, Clyde Namul, who was the administrator at that time, and I said, would you folks be willing to support me in writing this manuscript? Normally people do that. You know, people can get grants from the Ford Foundation, from other places for a research grant. So I thought maybe I can approach the Office of Hawaiian Affairs. So they agreed. It was going to be a $75,000 contract, which is typical, right? It's nothing outrageous. And it's also going to help me survive because I'm not in school anymore. So it's going to help me do my research. So as I began to do the research and began to write my manuscript, I began with Hawaiian land titles before 1845, or what I call Hawaiian land tenure. Then I moved into the formal land title process after 1845, Royal Patents, Land Commission Awards, the Great Mahele, and then I moved it all the way through until 1893. Okay. Now, by 1893, in order for people to convey property, you need to get your deed notarized and then recorded in the Bureau of Conveyances. Well, the Bureau of Conveyances and notaries are government positions. Well, 1893, the overthrow of the Hawaiian government, which was the basis of my dissertation, was clearly showing that you cannot transfer property after 1893. So all titles stopped in 1893. I knew that before. Now, then I'm going to have to bring that to date. Now, from 1893 till today, it's not about land titles. It's about pillaging. It's about properties being seized. It's revenues being collected. It's considered theft, taxation, property taxes. Those are all emanating from an entity that is illegal. So today, we have people in the state of Hawaii government that have inherited an illegal situation. And as I began to get into what is called humanitarian law, which is the law of occupation and war crimes, which was not the subject of my doctoral dissertation. My doctoral dissertation focused on international law and why the Hawaiian Kingdom continues to exist and it is currently occupied by the United States. I'm now getting into the nuts and bolts of the consequences. And that's when I got into the issues of criminal liability. That included not just the Office of Hawaiian Affairs, who was funding me, because they are receiving monies that have been pillaged by the state of Hawaii, but also the state of Hawaii themselves. And I began to earnestly look into this issue. How do we fix this problem? Now, this was unforeseen. I did not realize I would be getting into these issues when I signed that contract in 2009. And I've been taking active steps to address these issues. By the time that the change in leadership at the Office of Hawaiian Affairs took place, Dr. Kamana Opono Crab succeeded Clyde Namul. I approached Dr. Crab and I explained to him the situation and that I am intentionally not submitting this manuscript to be published until I can take every step that I can to mitigate or lessen the impact of this situation. Now, some people might say, well, just report them for criminal liability. This is systemic. This is the entire system. This whole thing is illegal. I have friends and family and cousins who work in government, police officers, firemen, tax officers, people who work at the Office of Foreign Affairs, sheriffs. It's not just one, it's all. And I deliberately began to move on addressing these problems. Dr. Kamana Opono Kreb, he understood that. And I had a $5,000 increment, the last increment of that grant, to be given to me once I submit the manuscript. And then when I told him that I cannot submit it, he says, well, we can't give you that last increment. I said, that's not a problem, because I'm not here trying to get the money. I'm here to fix the problem. So I explained this to Rick Daysog, but I'm answering his questions, but it was as if I wasn't giving him the answers he wanted. I knew something was wrong with this interview. No matter what I said, he didn't take it seriously. And he even voiced an opinion where he said, well, not voice an opinion. He even stated to me, why don't you return the $70,000? I said, what are you talking about? I did the research. I've written the manuscript. It's the last part I need to complete, but I'm going to submit it, but I need to take active steps based upon what I know in order to protect people. I'm not running away from the book, and I'm not running away from my contractual obligations, but this is an extraordinary situation. And then he moved on. And then he brought up the issue of Perfect Title Company. Why should people believe me because of what happened at Perfect Title? So then I explained to him, I said, well, I have a doctoral dissertation on this topic of Hawaii as an independent state. And everything that I stated, or much of what I stated or provided in my doctoral dissertation, is what I was saying during Perfect Title days. That's why titles stopped in 1893. Notaries were invalid. And he said, well, that's your theory. Again, another condescending statement. And I went, what do you mean it's my theory? Do you even know what a PhD is? And it was obvious he didn't. He thought it was just my opinion. I said, no, it's research. You don't argue your dissertation, you defend it. And if you cannot successfully defend your research, you don't get a PhD. And I said, I write. I have a book out. I have law journal articles out, peer review and law review. I'm a prolific writer. It's not that I'm running away from writing a book. I think you can clearly see from my background, I write. And that's not what he wanted to hear, you know. But I didn't know where he was going with this. But he also told me, when I shared with him, I brought up the issue of Perfect Title. I said, people said in Perfect Title days that we were telling people not to pay their mortgages. I said, that's ludicrous. And I explained to him that a mortgage is collateral. You don't pay a mortgage, you pay a loan secured by a mortgage. With or without the mortgage, you still owe the money. Perfect Title Company was advising their clients that they have a defect in title. Here's the evidence of the defect. File your claims with the insurance company. And then I told him, then I shared with him a story of Barbara Marshall, who came to our office at Perfect Title. I believe that must have been around 1997. And she came in, and she's from Action Line. And the first question she asks me, are you telling people don't pay their mortgages? And I said, no. And I explained what a mortgage is. Well, that's when Rick Daysog said, oh, I know Barbara very well. I said, really? Okay. And then I said, Rob Perez, the reporter from, I believe, the Star Bulletin, he was never writing what I said because it didn't fit in his narrative. He always painted the picture that we were bad and evil. And then he tells me, well, I used to work with Rob Perez. And that's when I became suspect. That's when I went, okay, I can connect the dots. And when the interview came to a close, I knew, learning from Rob Perez and his antics, I'm going to submit. I'm going to put an email together, send it to Rick Daysog right after my interview, and articulate the reason why I am not submitting this manuscript. I explained it. Now, when that story came out, the 2 days later, I was amazed at how slanted it was, how disrespectful, disingenuous, And it was a smear campaign. It was an attack. If anything, he confirmed what I thought in my interview. I thought this is not going to go right, which is what prompted me to write that email to him, explaining and articulating exactly what I said. And it was really just an attack on me. And they had this guy named Ian Lin. He's an amateur. What is his expertise? My PhD doctoral committee was comprised of very high-level experts. 2 deans of law schools, Avi Soifer, University of Hawaii School of Law. His background is constitutional law. Matthew Craven, University of London, State Sovereignty and International Law. 3 political science professors. My chairman was Neil Milner. He's the political pundit on KITV News that they rely on for advice or comment. John Wilson, Theory of Sovereignty, another political scientist, and Katharina Heyer, public law. I also had Jonathan Osorio on my committee. These people could not refute my evidence and my research, which is they signed off on my doctoral dissertation. Who is Ian Lin? He's a blogger. To me, that is clearly a smear campaign. How did he somehow become the voice of reason? And my only part in this whole story was a little blurb from the interview, phone interview, where I say that I'm concerned because of humanitarian law. Nobody in Hawaii knows what humanitarian law is. He conveniently left out that humanitarian law, which I said was the law of occupation that includes war crimes. I also explained to him in this email that I took active steps to meet with Mike McCartney, and we did on 3 separate occasions, to explain to him how big this is and that the state needs to understand what's going on in order to move toward a solution. I even provided a report to Mike McCartney. In my follow-up email to Rick Dasog, I laid it all out. Just how disingenuous this whole process was. And it's a smear campaign. And it doesn't make sense. It clearly shows that this is fake news. It's alternative facts.